In this video, we're going to take a look at the 10 hottest comics in the world from last week and talk about the potential future trajectory of these books. And I think that it's an incredibly valuable idea for a video because we uncover trends and ideas that we can apply to future Hot 10 lists and develop investment strategies in general. Stay tuned.
Bry's Comics.
This list has been taken from Key Collector Comics. If you haven't already downloaded the app, go and do so now. Use the code BRYSCOMICS and get a free 2-week trial of the app for half the price of a comic book. For $1.99 a month, you get insider information that can completely change your spec and collecting game. Also, subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, and like this video, and you're entered to win the 8K giveaway. I do believe this is the last 8K giveaway video before we actually draw a winner. Sign up for the newsletter at bryscomics.com, and you're entered to win a free slab each and every month, and you get exclusive access to awesome deals on great spec books. At number 10 on the list, we have My Greatest Adventure number 80, which is the first team appearance and origin of Doom Patrol in Chief, Negative Man, Elastic Girl, and Robot Man. And personally, I don't think it's a good time to buy this book for any reason. I'd like to mention as well that this commentary is totally subjective. It's just my opinion. I'm not suggesting that you follow my advice on any of these. Do your own research, form your own opinions, and you are certainly entitled to your own opinions because the purchase of comic books is a deeply personal thing. So it's never just one person's opinion. It ultimately comes down to your opinion. Now, I said that I don't think this is a good buy for any reason. And the way I see it is you would only buy a comic for two reasons: as a fan to collect or read, or as an investment. And if you're a fan of Doom Patrol and really want this book in your PC, I think the move to make would be to wait. Currently, Doom Patrol is on season 3 on HBO Max, and while there will likely be spin-offs and maybe even future seasons and spin-offs for some of the characters that first appear in this issue, there will definitely be lulls for this book as well. So if you want it for the PC, I'd wait for a lull. It's currently at an all-time high, and from an investment standpoint, I'd also steer away from this because there are so many other options with way more potential ROI, some of which are actually on this list. Number 9 on the list is Avengers 257. This is the first appearance of Nebula. I'm so glad to see this book getting the love it deserves. I've been watching all the MCU movies in timeline order, and every time I see Nebula pop up, I'm surprised at how cheap her first appearance is. She's such a big character in the MCU, and from the current rumors, she's going to have an even bigger role in the MCU starting in the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie. So I think this book has room to grow. However, with the current buy-in for a CGC 9.8 at $600 plus, I would steer away from it from an investment standpoint. I think there are other books with even more room to grow. If you also love Nebula as a character like I do and you want this for the PC, I think the move here to make would be to wait because the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie doesn't come out until mid-2023. It's a long ways off, and we'll likely see another lull in this book before it comes out. Right now, Guardians and Nebula is hot, but it won't stay in the news clear until mid-2023, so there will be better buy-in opportunities. And I think the biggest thing holding this book back is the cover. Personally, I'm not a fan of the art. You may love it, and more power to you, but I think all the Nebula Keys art is just so-so, except for Nebula number 1, the first solo series, and say what you will about that book and about that series, it has incredible art by Jen Bartel, and that's a huge part of collecting. Is if you're going to encapsulate a book and stare at the cover, it better be an awesome cover, and Nebula's first appearance cover just doesn't do it for me, which is why I didn't buy it for my PC. But I'm such a big fan of the character, if it had a really awesome cover, I definitely would have picked it up for the PC. Number 8 on the list is Black Knight number 1, the first appearance of the first Black Knight in Sir Percy. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I believe this is currently the most undervalued character in the MCU, partly because we haven't even seen him in the MCU yet. There are some big questions that need to be answered that will hopefully be answered in the Eternals movie that's coming out soon, although we will likely get some huge cliffhangers in that movie as well, which is total Marvel fashion. I think we will at least get a better trajectory for for the character of the Black Knight and Dane Whitman, played by Kit Harington. I'm all in on this character. I have all the keys. So I got 2 copies of this. I have a 2.0 that I got on a trade and a 4.0 that I recently bought like a month ago for $2,500. And I was actually just offered over $4,000 for the 4.0, and I said, no way. There's only 102 graded copies of this book on the census. Total 102 total graded copies. This book is incredibly scarce. I don't know of any other major MCU characters that have that low of a census population. And the reason I said no to over 4K, even though that would have been a healthy profit, is because this book is potentially a PC book for me. When I put a book into the PC, I look for 2 things. One, growth potential. And as far as growth potential, I think this character has more than any other MCU character. And 2, the cool factor, which can be either the cover or the story or anything that makes it a conversation piece. And the thing that's cool about this book is the Kelpidine diet ad on the back cover, which is an ad that states if you just eat this candy every time you're hungry, you're guaranteed to lose weight. Just some ridiculous 1950s marketing where anything goes. And for me, that's a conversation starter. I can talk about this book with my dad, who's not into comic books, or anybody who's not even in the comic book community. And that's what makes this book have PC potential for me. So I think if you have this book, you should hold it. And if you can find this book, you should buy it. The highest graded copy is an 8.5. There's 2 of them, and one of them is coming up for auction in Heritage's next big auction. The sale of that book is likely going to have trickle-down effects for all of the other books in every grade, and I believe this sale is timed perfectly with the release of the Eternals movie. The seller is no dummy, so it could be a perfect storm and have a massive sale. The actual book coming up for sale was on display at New York Comic Con, and it had a little sticker on it that said, coming to auction at Heritage, projected sale price $30,000, and I think it might smash that number. I may have just shot myself in the foot by mentioning it because a friend of mine and I were going to go in on this book together and buy it. We would definitely pay $30,000 for the highest graded copy of this, but I have a feeling we're going to be totally priced out. I think it's just going to smash that number. So this is the highest graded copy, 1 of 2. And if you look at any other major Marvel character in the MCU, the highest graded copies for those characters are well over $250,000, sometimes much, much higher than that. And Marvel has been consistently introducing new characters into the MCU and then giving them their own Disney Plus spinoff. We're seeing it with Agatha Harkness, and I believe Monica Rambeau will get a spinoff as well. And I have a suspicion that it will happen with the Black Knight and many other characters like the Red Guardian, etc. Number 7 on the list is Bloodstone number 1. This is the first appearance of Elsa Bloodstone, daughter and successor of the famous monster hunter Ulysses Bloodstone. The book made the Hot 10 list for an all-time high sale of $750, only to be outdone the next day for a sale of $900. If you look around and you're patient, you can find some really good deals. At the time of filming this video, there's a copy available at mycomicshop.com for $700. Don't sleep on mycomicshop.com, you guys. There are some great books over there, and so I think that a $700 to $800 buy-in is a good buy, but I'm also a little weary of it because that's already up 200% from where it was about a year ago on spec alone. And that said, the spec on this is solid, and it has an amazing cover. The spec is that Elsa Bloodstone has already been cast for the Blade movie, which is expected to be released next year, and if that happens, it is likely just the beginning of this character in the MCU. Like we're probably going to see with the Black Knight, with Monica Rambeau, with the Agatha Harkness. This is just another example of that. Marvel doesn't do too many one and dones, especially when it's a strong female role in a predominantly male monster genre. It makes perfect sense to me. Number 6 on the list, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 5, the first battle of Spider-Man and Doctor Doom. And this is an interesting one. And first off, I would venture to say that the first 62 issues of the Amazing Spider-Man run are solid investments. You could even argue that more than that are solid investments, but almost every single issue in the first 62 has something significant about it, and I believe will go up in value over time, especially the long term. Not all of those issues are major keys, and certainly certainly some will go up in value more than others. So, from an investment standpoint, I would stick to the major keys of the ASM run that have the most growth potential. From a collector standpoint, if you have to have an ASM run, if you're a completionist, I would say get the first 62 issues as soon as you can possibly swing it because the prices are just going to go up and up. But if you aren't a completionist, if you're just an investor, I wouldn't go for ASM 5 because I think there are other ASM keys that have more potential. Number 5 on the list is Avengers 71. Black Knight joins the Avengers in the first unofficial team appearance of the Invaders in Captain America, Human Torch, and Submariner. And this is one that I think is a solid investment even at today's prices. It's a great double key with a great cover. So really, there's 3 things going for this book that can increase the value over time. The biggest of which being Black Knight joining the Avengers. I think it's a highly likely thing to happen in the MCU, and I was eyeing a 9.6 copy of this on eBay that sat there for many, many months. Finally, it sold for $2,600, and I'm sure whoever bought that will do very, very well for themselves. I can see a post-credit scene of the Eternals movie suggesting Black Knight join the Avengers, skyrocketing this book, or something to that effect. I think now is the time to get in if you've been on the fence. Eternals is right around the corner. Number 4 on the list is Sandman number 1. This book has some serious potential, but there's also some serious risk. In my opinion, it all depends on how well Netflix does with the series and how well it's received. That will determine how high this book goes. And I've seen a lot of Netflix series that were not received well. And so it kind of sucks to not be able to have faith in the production studio like that, which is why the MCU is so investor friendly. But if they do it right, this book goes to the moon. There's almost 1,000 9.8s on the CGC census, which isn't a crazy high number relative to a cult classic fan favorite, but it's also not exactly scarce. This series was announced for Netflix in 2016. Filming began in October of 2020, and they just recently announced the casting. And so that gives you a good idea of how long these things can take to come to fruition, especially in these COVID times. COVID is still having a huge effect on Hollywood, so it's unknown when this will actually premiere. It's likely that prices will come back down a little bit before the show actually comes out. We saw a peak of $1,800 for this book in a 9.8, with the most recent sale around $1,350. So my advice would be to set an alert for eBay auctions and try to snag one on the cheap there. Number 3 on the list is Amazing Fantasy 15, first appearance Spider-Man. This book doesn't really need commentary. Yes, it's a blue chip key, arguably the strongest blue chip key in existence. I believe it will continue to rise, especially over time, but pretty much all of us are priced out of this. So if you got that FU money, go for it. And the rest of us will continue to enjoy seeing these high sales on the hot list week after week. Personally, I don't get tired of seeing AF15. I'll take a look at that cover any day. Number 2 on the list is Fantastic Four number 94. First appearance of Agatha Harkness, first appearance of her cat, and first mention of Franklin Richards. I think this is a great investment, and I think there will be many opportunities to get in on this book in the coming months, so I would wait. It was just announced that Agatha is getting her own spinoff on Disney Plus, and usually what happens with something like that is there's a long wait, prices dip, and then a lot of hype right before the show actually comes out and once they're promoting it. So timing is everything with this one. The Franklin Richards tidbit is just an awesome bonus. On the splash page, Sue and Reed announced the name for their new baby. Apparently it took Stan Lee and crew several years to figure out what they wanted to do with the character. They didn't know about his powers. They didn't know if they wanted it to be a boy or a girl, etc. So just a cool piece of history, and any Franklin Richards news, this book will spike from that as well. So there's potential for many different lives for this book. Number 1 on the list last week was ASM number 300, the newsstand edition. The first appearance of Venom. There was a 9.8 sale of over $20,000, which is absolutely mind-bending for me. I am completely shocked about this sale. This must have been someone with FU money that just saw the movie, really wanted the best possible comic for Venom, and which I do believe Amazing Spider-Man 300 newsstand is the best key for Venom. and they just shelled out the dough. I don't believe this is a good investment at that price for a high potential ROI. It is quite likely that this price could sustain, and eventually over time it very well could go up, but I think the ROI for this book at a $20,000 buy-in is going to be painstakingly low. Of course, this is just my opinion. I can't read the future. I absolutely don't know what's going to happen, but I think that price is way high. Something interesting could happen here, and that's the price of the 9.6 newsstand. This month they've been selling for around $2,250 to $2,500, so there could be some serious correction for the 9.6. The 9.6 peaked at $4,750 and last month had two sales as low as $1,775. That's a huge spread, but I do think that this monster sale of the 9.8 means that those outlier lows for the 9.6 newsstand are over. Unless it goes to auction, then all bets are off. Auctions really are the big wild card with some of these books because it's highly likely that not all the right eyes are on the auction, and that's why we get outliers. It's not that ASM 300 9.6 newsstand is really worth $1,775. Maybe it was an auction ending at a weird time and buyers just didn't know, or maybe the seller was desperate and just made a crazy low offer just to move the book. So if you're in the market for this one, I think a 9.6 is a good grade with some potential growth. Set an eBay auction search and be patient. However, I think there are plenty of other books with better ROI. So as you can see, there is a ton of nuance to this. Different people have different collecting and investing goals, and all of that comes into play when purchasing comics. Only you know what's right for your personal situation, but it is important to think these things through and to have a strategy. Personally, for books that I'm investing in, I try not to get too emotional, and I just go for the books that have the highest potential ROI in the shortest amount of time. But for my personal collection, I like to go for books that speak to me on a personal level and have a ton of future potential growth. Because with hundreds of thousands of comic books to choose from, you can have both. And that's what makes this hobby so exciting, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. Don't forget to download the Key Collector app and use code BRYSCOMICS for a free 2-week trial of the app. Subscribe to the channel, comment on this video, and like this video, and you're entered to win a valuable stack of comics for my 8K giveaway. Sign up for the newsletter at bryscomics.com, and you're entered to win a free slab each and every month. Thank you so much for sticking with me all the way to the end of the video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bry's Comics.